Hello, everyone, and a warm welcome to another episode of the Talk Room series of podcasts. I'm Wendy, and today we're diving into an incredibly interesting and relevant topic: why so many resolutions fail and how to set goals that stick. We will be looking at this and how you can be your best self, even when faced with this particular challenge, by leveraging the power of counselling and therapeutic support. So, for those who are joining us for the first time, I would like to introduce my co presenter, Ian. Ian is a senior accredited National Counselling and Psychotherapy Society member and the founder of Hope Therapy and Counselling Services. Hope is a counselling and coaching organisation offering support throughout the entire UK for a wide range of concerns and challenges, and works with goal setting on a very regular basis. So, a warm welcome to you, Ian.
Thank you, Wendy. And let me return the favour by introducing you. So, Wendy is a highly, highly experienced CBT psychotherapist who's been involved in the field of mental health and well-being for well over 30 years now. We're both passionate about helping people to navigate their mental health, their relationship, and their well-being journeys. And today's discussion about goal setting is a really crucial part of that.
Absolutely, Ian. Couldn't agree more. So, goal setting, both particularly at New Year, but all other times of the year. It's a really important subject, I think, isn't it? And it's something we have discussed before. But for those who haven't seen our previous podcast, could we start with me just asking you to introduce today's topic?
Of course. So today's podcast will be something that so many of us can relate to, New Year's resolutions, but also target setting more generally. You know, those promises we make to ourselves every January, filled with hope and determination, only to watch them fizzle out by about mid-February. And I'm sure that most of our listeners will be able to relate to that. Did you know that about 80% of resolutions fail by the second month of the year? That's 80%. It's like the gym that's absolutely packed in January and it's suddenly a ghost town by the time you get to Valentine's Day. And most of us have been there at one point or another. So a few years ago, I told myself, this is the year I'm finally going to learn a new language. I downloaded the app, I bought a fancy notebook, I even practiced saying hello to in French to the cat. And by March, the notebook became a coaster for the coffee mug, and I couldn't even remember how to ask for directions. But why does it happen? And more importantly, how can we turn those failed resolutions into goals that actually stick for us? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. What goes wrong, the psychology behind it, and some tips and some tricks to help people to finally meet their goals this year.
Yeah, that's great, Ian. And as you say, I'm sure most people can really relate to a failed goal setting at some time of the year. But of course, maybe in particular, New Year resolutions. So, can we start by asking why so many resolutions fail?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about exactly that. So, why do so many resolutions not make it past February or even January for lots of us?
Mhm.
And the truth is that most resolutions are set up to fail right from the start.
Okay.
So let me explain. First off, a lot of resolutions are just simply far too vague. So think about it. How often have you heard or even said yourself, this year I'm going to get healthier or I'm going to save money? Great intentions, but what does getting healthier even mean? Are you planning to exercise 3 times a week, or are you thinking about eating more veggies or just drinking more water? So, without specifics, it's really hard to know where to start, when you've achieved your goal, or even to monitor progress as you go along. So, it's being specific.
Mhm.
And then there's something around ambition. And you know me, I love big dreams. But setting goals that are totally unrealistic is like signing yourself up for failure. If you've never run a mile in your life and decide I'm going to run a marathon by March, you're putting way too much pressure on yourself. It's overwhelming and you're more likely to give up than to push through. So being realistic, we don't have that feeling of I'm never going to get there, so what's the point? It's really important that we just have a sense of realism about things. And another big one is simply the lack of a plan for lots of people. A resolution without a roadmap is simply a wish. It's like saying, I'm going to Paris, but never booking a flight or packing a bag. If you don't break the goal down into manageable steps, it's so easy to lose steam. It's so easy to abandon it altogether. And then we have to think about motivation. A lot of us set resolutions because we feel we should, not because we really want to. And maybe everyone else around you is setting fitness goals, so you feel pressurized to join them. But if you're not genuinely excited, if you're not genuinely invested in the goal, it's really hard to stay committed. So really just thinking about what is your motivation. And then lastly, life gets in the way. You miss a workout, you eat a slice of chocolate cake, you skip a language lesson, and suddenly it feels as though you failed. And instead of dusting ourselves down and trying to get back on track again, we just throw in the towel completely. So to sum it up, vague goals, unrealistic expectations, a lack of a plan, lack of true motivation, and being too hard on ourselves are all things that get in the way. They're all culprits behind failed resolutions. So today we're going to hopefully dig into how to set goals that work for people.
Okay, Ian, that sounds really great. Okay, so how about starting by talking about the science behind goal setting?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and there is actual research behind how to set goals that work. And if people have ever heard of SMART goals, they're already on the right track. For those that haven't, let me just break it down. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And it's a framework which helps people to turn a vague wish into a solid, actionable plan. So let's say that your resolution is to get healthier. If we make it a SMART goal, it might look something like I will exercise for 30 minutes, 3 times a week for the next 3 months. And now you have a clear target, a way to measure progress, and a timeline to keep you accountable as well. But here's the kicker, here's the really important part. It's not just goal setting, it isn't just about writing it down. It's also about how you think about the goal as well. And psychologists talk about something that's called intrinsic motivation. And that's when you set goals because they genuinely matter to you, they're genuinely important to you, not because someone else thinks that you should. So, for example, if you want to exercise because you feel good, you're much more likely to stick with it than if you're doing it just to impress other people. So it's important to really reflect on our motivations to set goals, rather than things that we can relate to, things that are genuinely important to us, and just thinking about, okay, so what is that goal going to be? Let me pick something which is going to really resonate with me. Another key factor is breaking big goals into smaller bite-sized chunks. And this taps into something called progress monitoring. So when you can see yourself making small wins along the way, it triggers a sense of accomplishment, which motivates us to keep on going. It's like climbing a staircase. You don't need to focus on the top step, just the next one. So just breaking it down, thinking about each little step as we're going along and setting that as a little mini target. And then there's the power of visualization. And studies really clearly show us that imagining ourselves achieving the goal, crossing the finishing line of a race, or nailing a really big presentation can boost the chance of success. So, really visualizing ourselves doing it. But the trick is don't just picture the success, also visualize some of the challenges you might face as you go along. And that way, you're mentally prepared for setbacks as they arise. And then there's something around accountability as well. So, sharing your goal with friends, joining a group, joining a club, even downloading an app to track progress can really make a huge difference. When you know someone else is rooting for you or they're checking in with you, it's so much harder to quit. So the science is pretty clear. We set smart goals. We stay intrinsically motivated. We celebrate the small wins. We visualize the journey, and we try to have some accountability and somebody in our corner backing us and supporting us. And with those tools, we're well on the way to making those resolutions stick.
Well, thank you for that, Ian. That's really helpful and very, very clear. That's great. I'm just wondering now, perhaps discuss the sort of challenges people might experiencing and why goal setting might be so hard for certain people.
Yeah, absolutely. And goal setting can be really tough for lots of reasons. Um, it's something many of us struggle with, especially around the excitement of New Year. So, a few reasons why it happens. The first is just we can feel a sense of overwhelm. Sometimes the idea of setting goals feels so huge, so big, so complicated that it actually paralyzes us. We go into a freeze state. You think about everything you want to achieve, and suddenly it feels like you're climbing a mountain. And it's so easy just to get stuck in the planning phase and never actually take that first step. There's also a fear of failure. And this is a really big one. A lot of people avoid setting goals because they're scared of failing. They never actually start. And maybe you've tried before and didn't succeed, or maybe you're afraid of not being able to live up to your own expectations. But the truth is, failure is often a really important part of the process, and it's where we learn and it's where we grow. Unclear goals is also a really big one as well. So again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier about SMART goals. When goals are vague, like saying I want to get fit, they're really hard to stick to. If you don't have a clear target, if you don't have a clear plan, it's so easy just to lose that motivation or forget why you've even started doing it in the first place. So specific goals are so much easier to work towards because you know exactly what you're aiming for. We then need to think about motivation, and that can be really tricky for us. Um, at first, we might be super pumped, super motivated about a particular goal, and then that excitement can start to fade. And if your goal isn't something that you really care about, and you have a clear understanding as to why this is important, it's really hard to stay motivated in the long term. So motivation needs to come from within. Um, it's not just I'm doing a New Year's resolution because it's New Year, or because somebody's told you to do a particular thing. We really need to have a clear understanding as to the reason that we're doing it. And then there's something around perfectionism as well. And lots of people struggle with goal setting because they feel they need to have everything absolutely perfectly planned out before they start. But here's the thing, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a perfect plan. There's a phrase, perfection Perfectionism is the enemy of the good. Perfectionism can hold you back from even trying. It's better to just start, accept that we're going to make a few mistakes along the way and adjust things as we go. But if we tell ourselves that we have to be perfect, then it's likely that we may never start, or if we do, we're much more likely to see self-sabotage starting to happen, to start saying to ourselves, well, I've just failed it, rather than by seeing minor little mishaps as a natural part of the learning process. And then no support, no accountability. Again, it's really easy to let goals slip if no one's checking in on us. So without support, without accountability, it can feel like the goal is just another thing on a never-ending to-do list. Having someone, whether it's a friend, a coach, a therapist, just helping us, just being there in our corner can just make the difference in staying motivated and focused. So if you've ever struggled setting goals, you're definitely not alone. We all have, I have. But the good news is once you understand why it's so tough, you can start making small changes to just set yourself up for success. So just remembering that SMART idea that we talked about earlier, the specific, the measurable, the achievable, the relevant, and the time.
Okay, thank you, Ian. That was a really helpful explanation. So, as you said, we have talked about the SMART goal setting and also the things that might hinder achieving our goals. Um, are we able to focus a little bit more on how to set goals that actually really stick?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you say, we've talked about the science behind goal setting. So let's get practical and turn that knowledge, that theory into action, into practice. And first of all, just focus on one or two goals at a time. That's really, really important. It's tempting to try to tackle everything all in one go, a new diet, a new exercise regime, a new hobby, learn a new language. But spreading yourself too thinly usually leads to burnout. It usually means that we're not going to be able to sustain them. So just picking the one or two goals that really matter the most to us and channeling our energy into that. That's really important. And secondly, just as we've already said, being specific. So if the goal is too broad, like I'm going to get fit, it's hard to know what to do next. Instead, just narrow it down. I'm going to do a 20-minute yoga class, three times a week. That way, you have a very clear, actionable plan. And thirdly, breaking it down into smaller steps. So let's say the goal is I want to save £1,000. Instead of focusing on the £1,000, breaking it down. So we can have monthly or weekly targets, like I'm going to save £20 a week, because we can see that we're doing that, and that £20 figure acts as a reinforcer to us. And so achieving those smaller wins keeps you motivated in the longer term. And then building a routine around the goal itself. So habits are powerful. And if your resolution is to read more, tie it into something that you already do. So like reading for 10 minutes with your cup of coffee in the morning. The more automatic it becomes, the less effort it will take to stick to it. And another tip is to make sure that we're tracking our progress. So whether it's a journal, whether it's an app, or simply a checklist, if that works for you, seeing your progress in black and white can be incredibly motivating. Plus, it can help you to identify patterns as well, what's working well for you and what isn't working well for you. And then just celebrating the small wins as we go along. So every step forward is a success, no matter how small that success may feel to us. So treating yourself when you hit a milestone, it could be having a favorite meal, having a movie night, buying yourself a little something, whatever it may be, but just celebrating those successes as you go along. And then here's a really, really big one that so many people miss. Be kind to yourself. So setbacks are part of the process. And remembering what I said just now about perfection can be the enemy of the good. So missing a workout or breaking a diet isn't a failure; it's just a bump in the road. And the key is to refocus, it's to dust ourselves down and to start again. And keep moving forward and accepting that there are going to be little mishaps along the way, not throwing in the towel just because something is happened. And then there's that accountability. So just sharing the goal with a friend or a group with similar interests, or work with a coach, work with a therapist who can support you along the way. Knowing that there's somebody in your corner or just checking in on the progress can really make a huge difference. So, to try and summarize a little bit of that, focus on fewer goals, make them specific, break them down into manageable bite-sized chunks, build habits, track your progress, celebrate your wins, and stay kind to yourself, having accountability along the way.
Mm. Okay, thank you so much for Ian. There's a lot of very good tips there that I'm sure lots of people can relate to that. Um, I'm just wondering, is there any other tips that you can add that you haven't already covered at all?
Well, a few things that maybe we haven't gone into in too much detail. I mentioned keeping it realistic. So it's great to aim high, but don't set yourself up for disappointment. So if you've never run before, don't say you'll run a marathon by March. Start maybe with a run around the block or a 5K run and build yourself up. Small, realistic goals make it easier to build momentum and keep you just feeling accomplished as you head towards that final goal. Make it personal. So make sure your goal is something that really matters to you, not just something that you think you should do or somebody else has told you about. Something that you feel passionate about, learning a new language. It'll be easier to stick with if it has meaning to you. And remembering what I said earlier about intrinsic motivation, that's really the key to this. So, something that has meaning to us means we're more likely to be motivated by it. Setting a timeline. So, having a deadline is really motivating. It doesn't have to be anything huge. So, it doesn't have to be, I'm going to lose £20 by the summer. So, just instead thinking about shorter, more achievable timelines, like I'm going to eat a vegetable at every meal for the next week. And once you start hitting those little mini goals, the bigger ones don't seem so daunting and we're more likely to stick to things. And then being flexible and kind to ourselves. We've talked a little bit about that already. But just remembering life gets in the way, life happens. Sometimes you'll miss a workout, sometimes you'll forget to meal prep, or you miss a day practice, or life just gets in the way and you don't feel like doing anything that particular day. But don't beat yourself up about it. Instead, adjust the plan, keep going. Being kind to ourselves helps you bounce back faster. It means you're more likely to stay committed even when things don't go perfectly. It's much more likely that we're going to keep on going if we're not hugely critical to ourselves. So whether we're setting a New Year's resolution or just a personal goal, these ideas can be really, really helpful in just giving us the best chance of success.
Mm. Oh, okay. Thank you, Ian. That was really, really helpful again. Very, very helpful. Um, I'm just wondering now whether a counsellor or a coach could be really helpful as well in supporting us with developing and devising and maintaining our own goals. Um, I wonder if there are any other ways a counsellor can support us other than ways we've already discussed at all. Any ideas there?
Yeah, so counselling or therapy can be a huge support. in lots and lots of different ways. So partly just supporting us with things we've already discussed, but there are specific things they can help us with too. So one of the things is surrounding clarity, is around focus. And sometimes the reason our resolutions fail is because we're not clear on what we actually want, what's actually important to us. And a counsellor or therapist can just help us to dig a little bit deeper into what our goals should be, exploring what truly matters to you, why it's important as well. And that process of deeper exploration can often bring clarity, which makes it easier to set specific goals, realistic goals, and to stick to them as well. They can also help us to look at overcoming limiting beliefs as well. And we all have those little voices in our heads that say, I'll never be able to do it, I don't deserve this. Those little voices are called limiting beliefs, and they can prevent us from even trying very often. And counselling and therapy can just help us to identify, to challenge those beliefs, replacing them with healthier, more empowering thoughts that allow you to take the next step forward. Helping us to build motivation and helping us to build accountability. So again, a therapist or a counsellor can just work with us to identify what motivates us, making it easier to stay on track with our goals. And sometimes just having someone to talk to about our progress or our setbacks, accepting that those are a natural part of the process, can keep you accountable and prevent you from giving up on something altogether when it starts to get tough for us. And you'd be surprised how much a check-in with a supportive counsellor or therapist can just help to keep us motivated with something. And then there's just the emotional support that comes with working with a counsellor or therapist. So setting and pursuing goals can really bring up all sorts of emotions for us: excitement, fear, frustration, self-doubt. And counselling therapy can just provide a safe space to explore those emotions, to start to process them, to make sense of them, to learn how to navigate them without letting them completely derail us. They can just help to teach us coping strategies for dealing with the stress and the occasional disappointment and anxiety that may accompany us on that journey of working towards those goals, helping us to develop healthier habits. So achieving goals isn't just about the finish line, it's about achieving lasting habits that sustain us on that journey. And counselling and therapy can just help us to build that healthy mindset around habits and routine, teaching us how to approach goals in a sustainable way. Instead of relying on bursts of motivation, a counsellor can help us create consistent and realistic actions that lead to longer term success. So whether goals are about personal development, whether they're about career progress or improving relationships, or just a run-of-the-mill New Year's resolution, counselling and therapy can really help us with giving us tools that can support us in making those goals more than just a New Year's resolution. It can help make them a really important and lasting part of our lives.
That's really interesting and a lot to think about there. A lot of food for thought there, Ian. Thank you so much for that. And so I'm wondering if somebody's listened to this podcast and they feel they might benefit from some more professional help from a therapist or a counsellor, what should they do next?
Yeah, a really important question. So if people are looking for professional help, then there are organisations like Hope Therapy and Counselling that are there to help. We have a team of highly experienced counsellors and therapists and coaches who really specialise in wide-ranging areas, who can help people just to work on their goals, whatever it is that's important to them. So people can take a look at our website, www.hopefulminds.co.uk. We have lots and lots of free resources on the website, but we also offer free consultations to people as well, where we just talk to people about their needs in a really unpressurized way. And that can be a really great first step in just helping people to understand what their goals are, what they might want to be working on, and the sort of support that's available as well. And you, Wendy, you're a really experienced therapist, and I know this is an area that you work with on a very regular basis. So maybe just letting people know a little bit about you and what you offer as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ian. So my website is called wendycastellino.com, which is my name. It's quite easy to remember. And you can easily just email me or send me a message there. It's got all my contact details, all my information, and some free resources there as well. So please, if anybody feels like they want to work on area this or any other areas they want to, then they can get hold of me, wendycastellino.com. So, just a final thank you to you, Ian, and for everyone who's been listening to this podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share this episode with anyone who could use a little boost in turning their resolutions into reality. And that applies to an awful lot of us. So, thank you so much, Ian.
And thank you, Wendy. Goodbye.
Goodbye.